For 16 months, Hannah Pierce had survived on numbers. Rent past due notices, $3.84 left on an EBT card, and a calendar where after the holidays meant never. On Christmas Eve, after 3 doors closed in her face, she did something a proud mom would swear she'd never do. She walked into a roadside diner and asked strangers for hot water so her twins could eat oatmeal. But what happened in the next 60 seconds would pull 200 Hell's Angels into a town that had trained itself to look away. This is Cole Bishop Hart and Hannah's story, and it doesn't go the way you'd expect. And the part nobody could have predicted is who tried to stop the help. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. Please, Hannah said, voice thin as paper. Just hot water. That's all. The sign on Mabel's Lantern Diner's front door said 10 minutes until we lock up, written in thick marker under a smudged wreath sticker. Hannah read it twice, because counting was how she kept panic from driving. Her red knit beanie had a torn pom-pom that bobbed when she shifted weight off her swollen left ankle. Every step made her boots squeak on wet tile, and every squeak reminded her she didn't belong in warm places anymore. Noah and Lily stayed close, tucked behind her coat like 2 little shadows. Noah's cough was dry and stubborn. Lily didn't cough. Lily clutched a small, stuffed reindeer with one missing eye and watched plates of food drift past like they were on another planet. The diner smelled like burnt bacon and coffee, and wet wool drying by the heater. The radiator behind the counter clicked steadily, a metronome for the last 10 minutes of the night. Hannah approached the register, holding a paper sack like it could fall apart and take the last of her pride with it. The waitress, Louise, gray hair pulled back, eyes tired but not unkind, looked up, then looked past Hannah to the back booth. Men in leather vests filled a long table, patches on their backs that made people lower their voices without being told. "What can I get you?" Louise asked, careful. Hannah swallowed. "A cup of hot water. I have oatmeal packets. We can pay." Louise's gaze flicked to the closing sign. "I'm supposed to shut the kitchen down," she said, and it sounded like an apology she'd practiced. Before Hannah could answer, a father in matching holiday sweaters slid between them, as if Hannah carried bad weather inside her coat. He moved the sugar caddy away from the edge like it might get stolen. "Ring me up," he said to Louise, loud, eyes forward. "We're in a hurry." Hannah stepped back, ankle protesting, shoulders folding inward to shield the kids. Rejection number 1 landed clean. No insults, just erasure. She tried again, softer. "Ma'am, just water. We'll stand outside with it." A business traveler with a laptop bag leaned toward Louise and whispered, not quite quiet enough, "Can you move them? I don't want problems." Problems. Like hunger was contagious. Louise's eyes dropped. The traveler walked away without looking at the twins once. Rejection number 2 was colder. Hannah guided the kids toward a small table near the window, hoping the glass could hide them. The wind hit the pane with a soft rattle. Outside, snow drifted under the parking lot lights, and the darkness beyond Route 19 looked endless. A teen couple in a booth laughed, phone tilted. Hannah caught the tiny red recording light before she caught the smile. The boy flicked a single fry toward the floor, letting it skid near Noah's boot like bait. Noah froze, instinct warring with shame. Hannah stepped forward and covered the fry with her own boot. She shook her head once, small and firm. The teens laughed anyway, the phone still tilted toward the twins. Rejection number 3 wasn't loud. It was humiliating. And then the last rejection came from people who wore kindness like a uniform. 3 women in matching holiday scarves stood near the door with clipboards decorated in snowflake stickers. Hannah recognized their smiles from the giving tree photos. One of them looked Hannah up and down like she was checking for stains. "We need to keep the diner peaceful," she said sweetly. "There are families here." Hannah blinked. "We are a family." The woman didn't flinch. "Christmas is for families who plan ahead." The words slammed something shut inside Hannah's chest. She saw Noah's hollow cheeks, Lily's one-eyed reindeer. She saw the 10-minute sign and the bruise on her cheek fading from purple to yellow. She saw the bruised ring around her wrist like a handprint she couldn't wash off. At sunrise, the motel manager would lock them out. Her car battery was dead. Her phone screen was cracked. She had 27 in her pocket, and a town full of people who kept saying, "Not my business." Hannah started counting under her breath, because counting was safer than crying. 1, 2, 3. And that's when the room changed. Not with shouting, with a chair scraping back, slow and deliberate. A man stood from the back booth and walked toward her with the calm of someone who didn't need to prove anything. He was tall, broad, gray-bearded, a faded marine tattoo on his forearm, and a black leather vest with a Hell's Angels patch that made half the diner go quiet. In Evergreen Junction, folks called him Bishop. Now, you might be thinking you know what a biker does when he sees a mother being cornered on Christmas Eve. You might be picturing threats, raised voices, a scene. Bishop didn't do any of that. He knelt on the tile so his eyes were level with the children. "Hey," he said softly, palms open. "I'm Cole." Lily tightened her grip on the reindeer. Noah coughed again. Bishop looked up at Hannah, and his voice stayed gentle. "What do you need?" The words escaped Hannah before she could protect herself from them. "Can my twins eat your leftovers?" she asked. 7 words. A plea and a surrender. Bishop slid his own plate forward, half a burger, fries still warm, and pulled out the booth seat like it was a formal invitation. "Sit," he said. "Your babies eat. You're safe now." Safe. Hannah almost didn't recognize the language. Noah took one careful bite, then another, food turning into heat. Lily watched Bishop's hands. Then Lily finally took a small bite too, still holding the reindeer as if it was her last proof she mattered. Bishop's eyes stayed on Hannah. "Tell me what's really going on," he said, voice low enough that it felt private even in a room full of ears. Hannah's gaze flicked to the window. Her breathing shortened. "The motel locks us out at sunrise," she said. "We haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Bishop nodded once, like hunger was a problem that could be solved with action, not pity. "And?" he asked, because he could already see the bruise patterns that didn't come from ice. Hannah's right wrist ached as if it remembered. "A man keeps finding us," she whispered. "Outside the motel. Bus stop. Tonight his boys grabbed my wrist and said I'd sign or freeze." Leather creaked behind Bishop. Someone at the back booth shifted. Bishop's voice didn't rise. "Name," he said. Hannah hesitated, because names were dangerous. "Elliot Granger," she whispered. Behind the counter, Louise went still. Just for a second. Like that name had teeth. Bishop's eyes narrowed. "There's more," he said. Hannah swallowed hard. 3 weeks ago," she whispered. "Behind this diner, by the propane cage." "I heard him on speakerphone." Bishop's voice stayed steady. "What did he say?" Hannah's hands shook in her lap. "He said, That policy is 340. I'm not losing 340. Her breath hitched. He said Christmas morning I sign. He said, same as Marissa. Cold weather does the work. Silence spread across the diner like spilled ink. Bishop didn't move for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then he stood, and the way he stood felt like a door locking from the inside. You recorded it? He asked. Hannah nodded, fast. My phone's cracked, but it's there. Police didn't want to listen. Bishop's gaze flicked once to the church ladies. Their clipboards suddenly looked like shields. Bishop's eyes held hers, calm as stone. Nobody touches you again. Not tonight. Not ever. If you believe no mother should have to beg for hot water on Christmas Eve, comment "Warmth wins" and subscribe, because what happens next is the kind of justice this town tried to pretend it didn't need. Doc crouched beside Noah, thick hands steady, medical bag at his feet. Slow, he murmured. Warm fluids first. Small bites. Chalk slid into the booth across from Hannah, eyes kind, voice soft. Can you be brave for 60 more seconds? He asked. Just 60? 60 seconds felt possible. Hannah nodded. Badge stood at the aisle, clipped haircut, watchful eyes that didn't miss exits or threats. He didn't introduce himself as ex-law enforcement, but the way he watched the room said it for him. Signal already had his phone out, quick fingers backing up Hannah's recording and capturing every text thread. Time stamps, numbers, screenshots, he said. No more, he said, she said. At the end of the long booth, Iron, white hair, hands like knotted rope, watched Hannah with a steady, almost weary attention. When he spoke, it wasn't loud, but people listened anyway. How many times did you ask for help? Iron asked. Hannah's laugh came out sharp and broken. County office put me on a wait list, she said. Police said it was kids messing around. Church said I needed proof I belonged. Her eyes flicked to the scarves. Motel manager tried to help, then got scared. Badge's jaw tightened. Someone leaned on him, he said. Bishop looked at the closing sign again. The radiator clicked. The snow pressed at the windows. Where do those 4 boys wait? Bishop asked. Hannah's throat tightened. Outside the motel. They show up when I'm alone. Louise's voice came from behind the counter, shaky. Evergreen Pines Motel, she said. Off the service road. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. A clear mission countdown. Signal lifted Hannah's cracked phone slightly. Let's play the recording once, he said. Everyone who needs to hear it, hears it. The diner heard Elliot Granger's voice, scratchy but unmistakable. Keep her scared, not bruised. Understand? A pause. 2 more days. Christmas morning. She signs. A pause. That policy is 340. I'm not losing 340. A pause. Same as Marissa. Cold weather does the work. Another voice. And the kids? Granger again, flat. They won't matter once it's filed. Louise covered her mouth. Her shoulders shook once. From the counter, Frank Dobbins, a retired trucker, set his coffee down too hard. That's his voice, Frank said, hoarse. He helped my niece after her husband passed. Folks called him a saint. Iron didn't blink. Saints don't talk like that, he said. Louise swallowed, eyes wet. I heard him out back that night, she admitted. I told myself you'd called the police. I told myself it wasn't my business. Her hands trembled as she slid a folded napkin across the table toward Badge. "License plate," she whispered. "I wrote it down. I couldn't throw it away." Badge unfolded it slowly, eyes narrowing at the letters and numbers, like they were finally giving him permission to act. Badge tucked the napkin into his wallet like it was a warrant waiting to happen. Then he leaned toward Hannah, voice calm and procedural. "Walk me through the paperwork," Badge said. "Start at the beginning. Don't guess, just facts." Hannah stared at the steam rising from Noah's soup, because it was easier than staring at the men in the parking lot. "He found me at church," she said, "right after my husband died. He said he was a benefits coordinator. He told everyone he did it for free." Chalk's eyes softened. "And then it wasn't free," he said gently. Hannah nodded once. "Processing fees," she whispered. "200 here, 150 there, always cash. He said it was faster." Doc's jaw tightened, just a notch. He didn't speak. But his hands paused on his medical bag, like he was holding himself back from doing something he knew better than to do. Badge kept it clinical. "Did he keep you alone when you signed?" "Always," Hannah said. He'd say, "The Lord helps those who do things the right way." And then he'd move me into a side office like I should be grateful for privacy. "What did you sign?" Badge asked. Hannah's throat worked. "An authorization to release benefits. He wouldn't let me take a photo. He promised copies in the mail." Signal looked up. "And the mail never came," he said, fingers already typing. Hannah nodded. "He said the holidays mess everything up. He said, let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Badge's eyes narrowed. "Did your address change on anything?" Hannah flinched. "Yes," she admitted. "He said he'd update it so the checks wouldn't get lost." "After that, I stopped getting letters." "Intercepted," Badge murmured, more to himself than anyone. Chalk's voice stayed warm. "Hannah," he said, "did he ever mention a notary?" Hannah's face drained. "Christmas morning," she whispered. 9 o'clock. He said if I missed it, the policy would close and I'd lose everything." "Do you have that in writing?" Badge asked. Hannah fumbled for her phone again, hands shaking. Signal gently took it, scrolling with care. "There," Signal said, turning the cracked screen so Badge could see. "Text from an unknown number. Notary APT 1225, 9 o'clock a.m. Don't be late." Timestamp is 6:12 p.m. Badge exhaled slowly. "That's your countdown," he said. "He picked Christmas because offices are closed, and you'd be isolated." Iron finally spoke again, voice low. "That's not paperwork," he said. "That's a trap." Louise wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, then surprised herself by stepping closer. "He runs the giving tree," she said quietly. "Granger. He's always here in December, smiling, taking photos." Louise swallowed hard. 3 weeks ago I saw him in the lot after closing, she admitted. 4 young men by his SUV. I told myself they were his nephews. Frank's stare stayed fixed on the booth. "Marissa Dale," he said suddenly, like the name had been sitting on his tongue for years. "Folks said she froze in her trailer during that big storm." Hannah's breath caught. "Granger said her name," she whispered. Frank's hands trembled around his mug. "There were rumors," he admitted. "A storage unit behind the car wash. Files, phones. People said he kept client stuff there." He looked at Bishop, shame in his eyes. "I heard it, and I kept driving." The diner had been warm. The coffee smelled like home. The church ladies carried clipboards with snowflakes. But beneath all that, there was a machine. Quiet. Organized. Built on people's silence. What Hannah didn't know was whether she'd walked into the only safe room in town, or the last place Granger's boys would ever let her leave. Outside, the wind rattled the glass again. Signal glanced toward the window, then back at Bishop. 4 hoodies by the ice machine, he murmured. They're here. Hannah's blood turned cold. She saw them in the lot, 4 young men, pretending to smoke, pretending to laugh, waiting for that 10-minute sign to turn into a locked door. Bishop placed a hand lightly on Hannah's shoulder. Not gripping, not owning, just steadying. Keep the kids eating, he said softly. You look at me. Chalk leaned closer, voice like a blanket. 2 minutes, he whispered to Hannah. Just 2 minutes at a time. 2 minutes, Hannah nodded, counting it inside her head. Bishop stepped away from the booth, toward the side wall where the noise of the diner softened. He raised his phone, and he made the call that didn't sound dramatic until you realized what it meant. Raymond, it's Cole. A pause that felt heavy. I need every brother within 50 miles at Mabel's Lantern. Now. Another pause. What's going on? Raymond, Old Saint Maddox asked, voice low, steady. A mother and her twins are being hunted over a 340 policy, Bishop said. We're not waiting for the system to take its time on this one. Old Saint didn't hesitate. Say no more, he replied. We're coming. The line went dead. And that was it. No questions about proof, no speeches about consequences, just a simple commitment. Because brotherhood wasn't a slogan to them. It was a procedure. Signal checked his messages. First wave in 16 minutes, he said. Full turnout by midnight. 16 minutes. Outside, one of the hoodies kicked snow at the curb like he was bored. Inside, Lily's one-eyed reindeer lay on the booth seat for the first time all night. Lily's hands were finally busy holding a warm spoon. 16 minutes, Bishop repeated, like he was giving Hannah something she could hold on to. He looked at Badge. We build the file, he said. He looked at Signal. We lock the evidence, he added. He looked at Chalk and Doc. We keep this family calm and warm, he finished. Then he looked back at Hannah, and his voice made promises feel like concrete. In 16 minutes, Bishop said, this town is going to have to watch. After that, we go to Tri-County Mutual and ask for every form Granger ever touched. We find out who Marissa was. Hannah's breath caught. Marissa. She died, she whispered. Bishop's eyes stayed on hers. Then we make sure he doesn't get a second one, he said. And now, armed with a recording, a license plate, and brothers racing in from the highway, Bishop was about to move this fight out of the snow and into the daylight. The rumble started low, far out on Route 19, like thunder you couldn't see yet. It grew into a rolling wall of sound, deep enough to make the diner windows tremble, and every conversation die mid-sentence. Headlights appeared in disciplined rows across the snow-dusted blacktop. Not one bike rushing ahead, not two weaving. Rows. 200 motorcycles eased into the overflow lot across the street and parked in clean lines like a drill team. The roar built, one engine, then dozens, until the whole town felt it in its ribs. Then engines cut off almost in unison. The sudden silence afterward felt heavier than the noise. 200 Hell's Angels stepped off their bikes and stood there without shouting, without fists, without drama. Just presence. Now you might be thinking that kind of arrival means chaos. But what came next was quieter. Worse for the guilty. Better for the innocent. They crossed the street in small groups, boots crunching over salt grit snow, leather creaking, breath turning to fog. They didn't crowd the door. They didn't act like a mob. They moved with the calm efficiency of men who'd learned that discipline wins cases. Old Saint came in last. Raymond Maddox's eyes found Hannah Pierce in one sweep, like her fear had a scent. Lily's one-eyed reindeer sat on the booth seat beside a warm bowl. Noah's cough was softer, but it was still there. Old Saint stopped 2 steps from the booth and nodded to Hannah with a respect that didn't ask her to earn it. Then he looked to Bishop. "What do we have?" he asked. Bishop answered with facts, not anger. "A recording," he said. "A Christmas morning notary trap, a 340 policy. 4 young men outside right now." Badge stepped in, voice clipped, procedural. "We do this clean," he said. "Statements, copies, law." Old Saint turned toward the brothers filling the diner. "The question is simple," he said. "Family says cool. Family stays warm. Evidence gets daylight. Granger sees cuffs before breakfast." He let the sentence hang, then asked it like a verdict. "All in favor?" The room went quiet. Just the ticking of the old wall clock and the radiator's faint hiss. For a moment, nothing. Then every hand went up. No hesitation. Not a single dissent. Old Saint nodded once. "Good," he said. And in that one word, a plan became a promise. Signal moved like a technician, not a warrior. He backed up Hannah's phone. Audio, texts, call logs. Twice. Timestamps visible. "One stays with us," he murmured. "One goes to law." Doc stayed with the twins, keeping it simple. "Warm first," he told Noah. "Small bites." Chalk stayed with Hannah, voice soft, steady. 10 more minutes, he told her. Just 10. 10 minutes at a time. Badge started building the case the way towns wish they had. He went to Louise Harper at the counter. Louise, 68, waitress, 42 years in Evergreen Junction, hands shaking around a coffee pot she wasn't drinking from. Badge's voice stayed gentle, but precise. "Louise," he said, "tell it clean. What you saw, when you saw it, why you stayed quiet." Louise swallowed hard. "What she saw," she began, "was Granger's SUV out back 3 weeks ago, Tuesday night, about 10 after 10. She described the propane cage, the wind, the way Hannah's coat moved like she was shielding something small. She described 4 young men in hoodies near the SUV, and Granger's voice on speakerphone, calm as a man ordering takeout. What she heard, Louise said, was "keep her scared" and the 340 line. Her hands trembled as she spoke. Why she stayed silent, she admitted, was fear and shame. Fear because he runs the giving tree, and people like that make trouble disappear. Shame because I told myself somebody else would handle it. Her guilt showed up physically, jaw tight, eyes wet, shoulders hunched like she was bracing for a blow. And then her confession came out in the smallest voice. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. I didn't want to be the one who made it worse." She slid the napkin with the license plate across the counter to Badge, like it weighed 100 pounds. That napkin was evidence, but it was also a receipt for a town's silence. Badge took it, nodded once, and turned to the next failure. Because there was always a next failure. Sandra Keene didn't walk into the diner. She called because she'd learned what happens when you show your face. 54. Former church pantry volunteer. The woman who used to sort canned goods and smile for holiday photos, until she saw the wrong kind of paperwork. Badge put the call on speaker so the trooper could hear. Sandra's introduction came out clipped, like she didn't trust kindness. "I served at Evergreen Community Church for 9 years," she said, "and I quit last spring." What she saw, Sandra said, was Granger working the Giving Tree line like a fisherman, handing grieving families help pamphlets. She saw him guide widows into a side office, always alone, always rushed. She saw the same phrase at the top of the forms, authorization to release benefits. She saw the same notary stamp used over and over, stamped by a woman who sat on the holiday charity committee. When she saw it, she said, was every December, every sign-up night, right after the photos. Why she stayed silent, she admitted, was overwhelm and retaliation. "I reported it to the pastor," she said. "He told me to stop gossiping and took me off the schedule." "I tried the county office," she said. "They said I needed a victim willing to file. And when I kept pushing," her voice tightened, "I got warned. You'll lose your job. You'll lose your church family." Her guilt cracked through anyway. "My hands shook every time I stamped a box of food," she said, "because I knew I was feeding people while someone else was picking their bones clean." Then she added the piece that changed the shape of the case. "I have copies," Sandra said. "Forms he forgot in the copy room. I saved them because I couldn't sleep." Signal gave her a secure upload link within 30 seconds. The third witness didn't come from a diner or a church. He came from a bank. TJ. Morales was a teller who'd learned the hard way that numbers can be dangerous. Anonymous, because he still had a job to protect, and because he'd seen what happened to people who didn't play along. What he saw, TJ said, were 11 cash withdrawals over 60 days, totaling $26,400, pulled right after benefits deposits hit. He saw the same pattern. Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw. Then a payday-looking purchase. He flagged it. He documented it. He did what the system says you should do. When he did it, he said, was late October, twice. Why he stayed silent after that, he admitted, was pressure. "My manager called me into the office," he said. He said, "That man's a community leader. Stop creating problems." His guilt showed up in his voice, fast, tight, like he was sprinting through his own confession. "I told myself filing the report was enough," he said. "I didn't want to lose my job before Christmas." Then he dropped the last rung of the ladder. "And the manager," TJ added, "is in Rotary with him. Same table, same jokes." Badge closed his eyes for half a second. This wasn't just failure. It was insulation. He stepped outside and called someone who didn't owe Evergreen Junction a favor. A state fraud investigator answered on the second ring. Badge kept it tight. "I've got audio tied to extortion and a $340,000 policy," he said. "Victim, 2 minors, active threats tonight. Church front, claims office, storage unit behind the car wash." A pause. Then, "Send it." Signal's transfer went out before Badge finished breathing. Within 8 minutes, a state trooper rolled into the diner lot, lights off. Careful. 2 local deputies arrived behind him. One of them was Deputy Coyle. Hannah went rigid the moment she saw him. Coyle's smile appeared automatically, the kind meant to calm and control. Badge stepped between Coyle and the booth. "Deputy," he said, "you're here as a witness, not a filter." Old Saint didn't threaten anyone. He simply watched, and being watched by 200 disciplined men made it harder to lie. The trooper listened to the recording, then took Louise's statement, Sandra's upload, and TJ's report. At 12:41 a.m. on Christmas Day, The trooper called an on-call judge. At 12:59 a.m., a warrant was issued for Tri-County Mutual's office and the storage unit behind the self-serve car wash. Bikers didn't kick doors. They staged. They moved like a security detail that understood the law would hit harder if it walked in first. The caravan rolled out in tight rows. No weaving, no revving, headlights steady. At the car wash, they parked one by one along the far edge of the lot and killed their engines until only wind remained. The storage unit sat behind the bays like a row of metal mouths. The trooper read the warrant out loud. Procedure mattered. Then he cut the disc lock and stepped inside first. Cardboard, paper, cheap cologne trapped in fabric, bins stacked high, a folding table, a neat little folder sitting on top like a dare. Holiday pressure, signal filmed from a respectful distance, timestamps visible. Badge lifted binders with gloved hands and started turning pages. Authorization to release benefits, over and over. And tucked into paragraph 4, the same poison. Temporary trustee, Granger Holdings LLC. Old Saint exhaled slowly. Not a helper, he murmured. A funnel. Then Badge found the calendar page. 12/26, close Pierce file, and beneath that, older paper. A death certificate. Name, Marissa Dale. Cause, exposure, hypothermia. Date, February 14th, 2021. Behind it, an insurance statement. $210,000. Beneficiary, Granger Holdings LLC. Taken out, December 3rd, 2020. 7 weeks. Same winter. Same method. Same machine. The second victim wasn't rumor anymore. She was ink. The trooper's voice went low. "That's a pattern," he said. "That's not an accident." Badge turned another page and found the notary stamp. It matched the name Sandra had just mentioned, one of the holiday charity women. Rung 4. Not just silence, participation. The trooper's radio crackled. "Visual on suspect vehicle," a deputy said. "Lifted black truck returning to residence." No one cheered. No one smiled. They just moved. At 1:17 a.m., officers pulled up to 312 Cedar Ridge Drive, Granger's neat, respectable house with a wreath on the door and a porch light glowing warm against the snow. When they knocked, Granger opened the door wearing flannel pajama pants and an apron. He was holding a spatula. The smell of cinnamon and butter drifted out like a holiday postcard. A carol played low from a kitchen speaker. Granger blinked at the uniforms, annoyed, like he'd been interrupted. "What is this?" he asked, voice calm, practiced. The trooper stepped forward. "Elliot Granger," he said. "You're under arrest." "For what?" Granger demanded. The trooper didn't debate. "Insurance fraud," he said. "Forgery, extortion, tampering with records, intimidation of a witness." Hands guided Granger's wrists behind his back. Not violent, final. Granger's mask snapped into place. Professional empathy. Wounded offense. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "I help grieving families." The trooper read him his rights right there on the porch, breath turning each sentence into smoke. Granger stared past the officers into the dark, like he expected a friend to arrive and erase this. Across the street, parked in silence, were bikes. Not roaring, not circling, just present. At 1:23 a.m., the trooper's radio confirmed it. "Suspect in custody." Later that morning, the bail recommendation would land hard, high enough to keep Granger behind bars while the daylight did its work, with a no-contact order attached before his coffee could cool. Hannah didn't need to see the cuffs. What she felt in the back seat of a warm SUV, Chalk beside her, Doc buckling the twins in carefully, was something she hadn't felt in 14 months. Stillness. The kind that happens when the monster finally stops moving. But what Hannah still didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was how deep Granger's paper trail ran inside Tri-County Mutual, and whether the town that let him operate for years would pretend it never happened. Justice had been served. But justice wasn't the ending. It was only the beginning. At 2:06 a.m., the heater in Bishop's truck finally started blowing real warmth, and Hannah didn't know what to do with it. Heat used to feel temporary, like a favor that could be revoked. This heat stayed. It loosened Noah's cough, softened Lily's tight grip on her one-eyed reindeer, and made Hannah's shoulders drop a fraction. Doc rode in the back seat beside the twins, voice low and steady. "Small sips," he reminded them. "We go slow. Your stomach's been doing without. We don't punish it by rushing." Chalk sat turned halfway toward Hannah, like his whole body was a promise. 2 minutes at a time, he said. That's all you have to do. Hannah stared out at Route 19 sliding past, snow falling in thin sheets under the streetlights. She kept seeing the diner's sign in her head. 10 minutes until we lock up. Like the world was always about to close its door. Bishop drove without speeding, hands steady on the wheel. "We're not dropping you back into the same place," he said. "Not after tonight." "Where do we go?" Hannah whispered. Bishop didn't answer with comfort. He answered with logistics. "Clinic," he said. "Then a warm bed that locks from the inside. Then paperwork in the morning. Badge already lined up a victim advocate." At 2:19 a.m., they stepped into Evergreen Memorial Urgent Care. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old magazines. The heater there hummed steady, different from Mabel's ticking radiator, and Hannah noticed anyway, because sound had become her warning system. Doc handed the intake nurse a one-page summary Signal had typed in the car. Names, ages, weights, symptoms, and the words "risk of malnutrition" underlined once. He spoke softly, but there was no room for dismissal. By 3:03 a.m., a physician confirmed what Hannah had been trying not to name. Dehydration. Early malnutrition. Noah's cough edging toward bronchitis. Hannah's ankle sprained and her wrist bruising consistent with restraint. Doc didn't let the doctor drift into vague language. "Write it plain," he said. "Document everything. Timestamps." At 3:44 a.m., the twins fell asleep sitting up, warm blankets tucked under their chins. Lily's reindeer stayed pinned to her chest like a heartbeat. Hannah tried to stay awake by counting. 1, 2, 3. Chalk stopped the spiral with a whisper. "You don't have to be on guard in here," he said. "We're right outside that door." And they were. Badge and Signal in the hallway, like a quiet wall. Bishop leaning by the vending machine, eyes open, iron sitting like he'd been built for waiting rooms. At 6:12 a.m., the sun came up pale and reluctant, and Evergreen Junction tried to act like it was just another Christmas morning. Granger didn't get that luxury. At 7:08 a.m., Badge walked Hannah into the county courthouse annex. A victim advocate named Marlene Rivera met them at the door. Practical, calm, the kind of person who'd learned to hold trembling hands without letting the world see hers. "We're filing an emergency protective order," Marlene explained. "No contact, no third parties, immediate. And we're requesting temporary emergency custody protections while services are arranged." Hannah's stomach flipped. "He'll get out," she whispered. Badge shook his head. "Not today." Signal slid a printed transcript of the audio across the table. Time stamps visible. The line, "That policy is 340," highlighted. Sandra's scanned forms were stapled behind it. TJ's bank report sat on top like a weight. At 7:54 a.m., the judge appeared on a screen, robe on, hair still uncombed. She listened once, then again. At 8:06 a.m., she signed the emergency order. She ordered Tri-County Mutual to freeze the Pierce policy and back pay immediately. She set Granger's arraignment for 9:12 a.m. When the printer spat out Hannah's copy, the paper felt warm in her hands. Paper used to mean threats. Today, paper meant walls. Across town at 9:12 a.m., Granger stood in front of a judge and tried to wear his mask: misunderstanding, service, faith. The prosecutor read the charges clean: felony insurance fraud, forgery, identity theft, theft by deception, extortion, intimidation of a witness, and child endangerment. Bail was set so high the room went quiet. The judge remanded him to custody. No debate, no special treatment, no Christmas miracle for the guilty. The town expected the bikers to make noise about it. They didn't. Old Saint stood behind Hannah like a shadow that had decided to protect instead of haunt. Bishop kept his hands in his pockets. Badge spoke only to the trooper and the advocate. Signal filmed interactions for accountability, not attention. By noon, investigators walked out of Tri-County Mutual with boxes of files and hard drives. One assistant admitted she'd been pressured to push documents through without giving copies. The storage unit evidence blew the case open, and the second victim's name, Marissa Dale, stopped being rumor and became ink. In Evergreen Junction, consequences were rare. That day, they were mandatory. At 2:47 p.m., Iron handed Hannah a key. Not a motel key card. A real key. "Apartment 3B, he said. "Pine Street. Quiet building. Locks work. Heat works." Hannah stared at the brass like it was too heavy for her hand. "How?" she whispered. Old Saint answered because he believed in naming reality. 3 chapters threw in, he said. Toy run money was already collected. We redirected $8,200 for first month's rent, security deposit, and basic furnishings. No loans, no strings. That night, Hannah stood in apartment 3B and listened to the radiator tick. Tick, tick, tick. In the diner, ticking had been a countdown to rejection. Here, it was just heat doing its job. Noah explored the living room like it was a new country. Lily placed the reindeer on the couch cushion like it belonged there. Chalk crouched to Lily's level with a small sewing kit. "Mind if we fix something?" he asked. Lily hesitated, then offered the reindeer slow. Chalk stitched a simple black button where the missing eye had been, careful and patient. It wasn't about the toy. It was about repair. That first night, Hannah kept walking back to the front door just to test the lock. Click, locked, click, locked again. It was such a small sound, but it steadied her more than any speech. Bishop showed up with a grocery bag and didn't make it dramatic. Oatmeal, peanut butter, bananas, a rotisserie chicken still warm in its plastic dome, and a $100 gift card taped to the top. "Food for the week," he said. "No pride required." Hannah tried to refuse. Bishop shook his head once. "You already paid," he said. "You walked in and asked. Most people never do." Later, Chalk sat at the little kitchen table with Noah and helped him sound out words from a library book the school donated. Lily lined her crayons in perfect rows and watched them from the edge of the room, not quite ready to join, but not hiding anymore. Doc left a printed sheet on the counter. Simple meals, slow increases, warning signs. "Refeeding can hit hard," he told Hannah. "If they get dizzy, if their heart races, you call me or you call the clinic. No waiting." In the weeks that followed, Old Saint quietly organized what he called the Warmth Ledger, donations from 3 chapters, tracked like a budget, not a miracle. By spring, the ledger showed $42,000 raised for short-term housing, car repairs, and emergency groceries for families flagged by the clinic and the schools. No speeches, just receipts. And Hannah, for the first time in 14 months, started to sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. 3 days later, Doc drove Hannah and the twins to a pediatric follow-up and then to the Evergreen Family Wellness Center, where a trauma counselor scheduled weekly sessions, one for Hannah, one for the twins together. Doc squeezed Hannah's shoulder once in the parking lot. "Getting safe is step 1, he said. Staying safe takes care." Signal set up Hannah's phone with a new routine. Emergency contacts pinned, location sharing with Marlene and the club, recordings auto-backed up. "You don't have to prove yourself alone anymore," he told her. Badge met with the prosecutor and made sure the case didn't become a headline that faded. He insisted on restitution paperwork. He insisted on audit expansions. He insisted the system write down what it had tried to ignore. Bishop did the simplest thing. He fixed Hannah's dead car battery in the lot, hands black with grease, humming quietly like the work was ordinary. And that was the point. Safety was built out of ordinary things done consistently. When trial came, the file was thick. Sandra testified about the forms and the notary stamp. Louise testified about the license plate and the night behind the diner. Frank testified about rumors he'd ignored. TJ's report mapped the withdrawals like footprints in snow. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated 1 hour and 46 minutes. Guilty. At sentencing, Granger tried his mask again. The judge didn't match his tone. 8 years in state prison, she said. No eligibility for parole for 5. She ordered restitution, and she ordered Tri-County Mutual to review every case Granger touched in the last 5 years. The Holiday Charity Committee's notary was charged separately for document falsification and conspiracy. Hannah didn't cheer when she heard it. She just closed her eyes and let her body believe what her mind couldn't yet. He couldn't reach her. 6 months later, Winter still came to Evergreen Junction, because Winter doesn't care about verdicts. But Hannah did. On a Thursday afternoon at 3:47 p.m., Hannah stood inside Mabel's Lantern Diner again. Not begging this time, but working. Louise had offered her the job after the first court day, sliding an application across the counter with trembling hands. "I can't erase what I didn't do," Louise had said, "but I can do something now." Hannah's first shift smelled like coffee and bacon and wet coats by the heater. The same smells. A different life. Noah sat in a booth after school with a library book, his cough gone. Lily colored quietly, her reindeer beside her with its new button eye. Outside, the snow fell in thin sheets. Inside, the radiator ticked. Tick, tick, tick. Only now, Hannah didn't count it like a threat. She counted it like proof she'd made it to warmth. Here's what I want you to notice, if you've stayed with this story. It wasn't the patch that saved Hannah first. It was a man kneeling to a child's level without making a show of it. It was a waitress writing down a license plate because guilt finally outweighed fear. It was a volunteer saving copies because her conscience wouldn't let her sleep. It was a teller filing a report, even when his manager tried to bury it. And yes, it was 200 motorcycles showing up, but not to intimidate. To witness. To stabilize. To make sure the truth didn't get handled behind closed doors. You don't need 200 bikers to change a story like this. Most of us don't have that. But you do have eyes. You do have a voice. You do have the ability to ask one uncomfortable question when something feels off. If you've ever watched a struggling mom at a counter and looked away because you were tired, this isn't here to shame you. It's here to wake you up. Because the machine Granger ran didn't run on genius. It ran on silence. In the months after the verdict, Evergreen Junction changed in measurable ways. Tri-County Mutual reopened 62 cases tied to Granger's coordination. And Mabel's Lantern Diner started a standing tab called the Warm Water Fund. No sign, no spotlight, just a note behind the register. If someone asked for hot water, they got it. If someone needed a meal, it was covered. In the first 6 months, that fund paid for 214 meals and 6 motel nights during storms. 1 year after that Christmas Eve, Hannah stood in apartment 3B with a small tree in the corner and laughed when Noah tried to hang an ornament upside down. Lily placed her reindeer under the tree like it was guarding the presents. Hannah ran hot water at the sink until steam rose. Oatmeal for the kids, coffee for herself. Warmth on purpose. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs a reminder that protection can look like patience. And in the comments, tell me this. Where are you watching from? And who was the person that made you feel safe when you needed it most? Because sometimes the difference between freezing and surviving is one person choosing not to look away. And sometimes it starts with the smallest request in the world. Just hot water. That's all.